So I want to welcome everybody to King James Bible University. Then I'm Micah, evangelist and teacher. And today then we're going to be going back over Sirach. So we're still in chapter 1. Then we're going to be going over verses 1 through 5, just doing a recap, and then going off into verses 6 and 7. But before we get started with Sirach, then I do want to make two announcements that I just wanted to address. So the first one was concerning the volume, like the sound from the last lesson that I did. Then it was covering confusion. Then it was more on Deuteronomy 22 and 5. Then I do understand that, the clips that I ran, then those were audible. But however, then my sound for the part that I did covering the lesson, for some people, then it was real low, said they were struggling to hear me. Then I went back and looked at my equipment, and the reason why the sound and it was so hard to hear, almost inaudible, was because the equipment unknowingly, like the volume set and the power, then it was on its lowest setting, and I wasn't paying attention to that while I was recording. So I do apologize, and I do know that I had made up for that by putting out a second taping of that same teaching with the sound setting, and it was louder, so where the lesson can be heard. But I do just want to take this time out to apologize, because it was on my end. We shouldn't have this problem today. Then I do have the power setting, and it's set at a more reasonable range, so we shouldn't have that problem today. The second announcement that I wanted to make was concerning a part in the lesson in Deuteronomy 22 and 5, while I was covering this verse right here: the woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, neither shall a man put on a woman's garment, for all that do so are an abomination unto the Lord thy God. So I wanted to address one typo, or just one miswording that I made while I was breaking down that lesson. Then I do know that I corrected myself later on while I was tearing down the scripture, but I just wanted to take the time to verbally just correct myself in front of everybody. So then we were doing Deuteronomy 22 and 5, and that's where I tied that to 1 Corinthians 15 and 40. So then I'm going to let the clip run, and then afterwards, and I'll take this time and just correct myself in front of everybody. So we have Deuteronomy, and we'll look at chapter 22 and verse 5. So this is Deuteronomy 22 and 5. So the woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, neither shall a man put on a woman's garment, for all that do so are abomination unto the Lord, the Spirit of thy God. So this scripture, then, it has two different senses. It has a natural sense and a spiritual sense. So beginning with the natural sense, so the woman and the man each have their own respective apparel, which are distinguishing factors for each sex. So we're not supposed to be cross-dressing as seen in a video, and even with when we move on and look even at the entertainment industry, where you have a lot of these black male actors and even non-black male actors, they'll end up playing these roles where they have to put on a dress, and they have to put on high heels and sandals and makeup and wigs, and for entertainment. Then they're trying to entertain the masses, the audiences, but it's still, then it's wickedness in the eyes of the Creator. On a spiritual sense, then it's addressing confusion, then which is demonstrated through the example of the natural sense. But on the spiritual side, then it's addressing confusion, and this confusion, it's to be avoided by the establishment of a difference between flesh and spirit. So concerning this journey that our spirits are in this world, God, then he has a set way in place. We're supposed to be separated unto him from the world. So that means that there's no gray area or no middle ground. And anyone saying or speaking contrary, then they're not of God. So we're going to use this right side, and we'll go over to 1 Corinthians, and we'll look at chapter 14, and we'll start with verse 33. For God is not of confusion, And the reason I said it this way is this author, the word the author, then that's italicized. So the translators, and they put that in there to give this text additional clarification. But when you remove the italicized words out of it, then it just reads, "For God is not of confusion, but of peace, as in all churches of the saints." So the people of the sanctuary. So then he's not of confusion. Then his word, then there's no sort of gray area, then there's no middle ground, then it's in absolutes. Then you have a black and a white. Then we also have 1 Corinthians 14 and 37. So this is what we're going to look at next. "So if any man think himself to be a prophet or spiritual, let him acknowledge that the things that are right unto you are the commandments of the Lord," which it's even with this Deuteronomy 22 and 5. So then that's the first precept with this teardown. Then we have more that we have to look at. So in the same book, 1 Corinthians, then we're going to go down to chapter 15, and we're going to look at verse 40. "So there are also celestial bodies and bodies terrestrial," which then we'll stop right there. And when we're looking at this verse, Deuteronomy 22 and 5 on the spiritual side, that's one body. Then that's a celestial body. Then when it's saying the woman, and you're looking at this on a spiritual sense, then that's talking about a spirit. That's one body. Then we have the man that's right here. Then that's the celestial body. Then just Evangelist Micah, so I'm back. So then that's then the part that I wanted to address and talk about. So then I just paused and at a recording. That's where then I ended up making my little typo with my mistake. Then when I was addressing that man part, then I did not mean to say celestial, then I meant to say terrestrial. And when this lesson and it was originally premiering, then I just let the entire lesson go through, because at a later time, while I was expounding and elaborating and tearing down Deuteronomy 22 and 5, then I ended up correcting myself later on. But this was the reason why then we are talking about this announcement right now. So then I'm going to let the rest of that clip play, and then we'll get on with Sirach. This is what you're looking at on the right side in 1 Corinthians 15 and 40. "So there are also celestial bodies and bodies terrestrial, but the glory of the celestial is one, and the glory of the terrestrial is another." So before we move on, just to reiterate, then we have two bodies here. Then we have this celestial body, which is talking about a spirit, the woman, and then we have this terrestrial body, which is talking about flesh. So now then we're back in the book of Sirach, and we're getting ready to recap verses 1 through 5, and then we'll be extending on to now work on verses 6 and 7. So verses 1 through 5, then it reads, "So all wisdom cometh from the Lord, and is with him forever. So who can number the sand of the sea, and the drops of rain in the days of eternity? Who can find out the height of heaven, and the breadth of the earth, and the deep, and wisdom? Wisdom has been created before all things, and the understanding of prudence from everlasting. The word of God Most High is the fountain of wisdom, and her ways are everlasting commandments." So with this recap, then we're going to first begin with verses 2 and 3. So verses 2 and 3, then there are illustrations of the omnipotence of God through a few of his works, which no man can search out entirely. So the questions asked to the reader emphasizes an important point concerning the mind of God, that his understanding is infinite, not being subject to limitations. So that's what verses 2 and 3 then it's telling you. So then we're going to first understand this by looking at Jeremiah 31 and 37. So then we're on the other side, and we're going to look at Jeremiah chapter 31 and verse 37. "So thus saith the Lord, if," so providing if, "heaven above can be measured, and the foundations of the earth searched out beneath, I will also cast off all the seed of Israel for all that they have done, saith the Lord. So in this verse, the Most High is making a promise based on a condition that so once again, if the earth and the heavens above can be measured, that he would cast off the seed of Israel for all that we have done. So moving on from there, then we have to expand upon this, and we're going to look at Lamentations. So now then we're in the book of Lamentations, and we'll go to chapter 3, and we'll look at verse 31 and 32. So, for the Lord will not cast off forever, but though he cause grief, yet will he have compassion according to the multitude of his mercies. And we're at Lamentations 3 and 31 and 32 for a reason. So then this precept, then it states that the Most High will not cast off forever. Then we also have to look at Isaiah, which now we're heading over to the book of Isaiah. Then we'll look at chapter 54, and we'll head over to verse 7. So for a small moment I have forsaken thee, but with great mercies will I gather thee. So then this is Isaiah 54 and 7. It makes it clear also that only for a small moment has he forsaken us, but he will return with great mercies. Then we have another precept that we need to look at. So we're going to head over to the book of Romans, and we'll go to chapter 11, and we'll look at verses 1 and 2, and then we'll skip down to verse 5. I say then, has God cast away his people? God forbid, for I am an Israelite of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. And so even with that right there, then that's going to do away with the narrative of people, then Paul is a Gentile, then he's telling you exactly where he is, and this is out of his own mouth. So God has not cast away his people which he foreknew. Wot ye not what the scripture saith of Elias, how he maketh intercession to God against Israel, saying, and we'll skip down to verse 5. So even so then, at this present time also there is a remnant according to the election of grace. So, which is going to bring us right back to Jeremiah 31 and 37, which we had ended up leaving. So then we're going to return back to Jeremiah, and we'll go back to chapter 31, and we'll look at verse 37. So thus saith the Lord, if heaven above can be measured, and the foundations of the earth searched out beneath, I will also cast off all the seed of Israel for all that they have done, saith the Lord, so the Spirit of God. So it brings us back to the promise God will fulfill if the conditions can be met in Jeremiah 31 and 37. The condition that God has set forth can no man fulfill. So however the statement made, then it shows the stability of the covenant God has made with his people, which, going back to Sirach chapter 1 and verse 2 and 3, the question being asked to the reader are impossible to answer. That also includes being able to measure out wisdom. So then it'd be impossible for anybody can number all the sand that is before the sea and the drops of rain in the days of eternity. Then it'd also be impossible for anybody to measure out how high then heaven goes, and the breadth of the earth and the deep. And it also includes wisdom. Then we also are going to be, but before we get there, then that also, I want to go back and just reiterate with Jeremiah 31 and 37. So then we went over to Lamentations 3 and 31 through 32, and Isaiah 54 and 7, and we looked at what Romans 11 and 1 and 2 and 5 is saying, and it makes it clear just in those three areas. So that's in those three books that the Most High, then he's not going to cast off the seed of Israel forever, then he hasn't utterly forsaken his people. So a statement like this, it's being made not as to put a challenge forth to anybody to be able to do this, because it'd be impossible to do that. It shows you how stable the stability of this covenant the Most High has with his people, that if this were possible, then he would cast off all the seed of Israel for all that they've done. But we know that's not possible, and even to this day, then there's going to be a remnant that's going to go in. So we know that these things that are being asked over here in Sirach 1 and 2 and 3, then they are not possible to know those things that he's created, nor to search out wisdom and to be able to number that exactly. So now we're going to head over to Job, because there's something important that we need to look at over in the book of Job. So we're going to go over to chapter 36, and we'll head over to verse 26 and 28. So Job 36 and verse 26 and 28. And this is an important key right here. So behold, remember, so God is great, and we know him not. Neither can the number of his years be searched out. For he maketh small the drops of water, and they pour down rain according to the vapor, so the body thereof, which the clouds do drop and distill upon man abundantly. So then this is another important key that's letting us know that the number of his years, and they can't be searched out. And as far as these drops of water, then they bring forth rain abundantly, then this knowledge that's coming from above, then it's only being made small, and it's pouring down rain according to the body thereof. So, for us as on the spiritual side, what this is telling us is when we head over to Deuteronomy and we go over to chapter 32 and we park over at verse 2, this information, this knowledge, we are getting our omer, then our portion, let me read it. So my doctrine shall drop as the rain, my speech shall distill as the dew, so being compared as to dew, as the small rain upon the tender herb, and as the showers upon the grass. So we looked over at Job 36 and 26 and 28, and it said that the rain, that it's being dropped down according to the vapor, so according to these clouds that bring forth rain abundantly. But if the Most High, then if he were to drop down all of the rain, all of the knowledge that he has, then it would drown us out, because then no man can search that out entirely. So then we're getting our omer. So if you're that small a tender herb, then you're going to get the small rain, and if you're that grass, then you're going to get your shower. So everybody, then they're getting their omer, which it's going to be according to your rate of understanding, but you're not going to get any less, nor you're not going to get any more. Then you're going to get your omer. We have something else that we need to look at. So then we'll go to 2nd Idris, and we'll go to chapter 4, and we'll head over to verse 10, which this is also tying in with Sirach chapter 1 and verse 2 and 3. So 2nd Idris chapter 4 and verse 10. So he said, moreover unto me, so thine own things, including such as are grown up with thee, canst thou not know. And that's the end of that thought right there. Then that's what we needed to pull. So in these two verses in Sirach chapter 1 and verse 2 and 3, then it's showing you through the few illustration of his works, then his omnipotence. So then his understanding, then it's infinite, and it's not subject to any sort of limitation. So then I have then another breakdown of Sirach chapter 1 verse 2 and 3, but before we move any further, then I'm going to let this sit in for a sec. All right, So now then we're getting ready to commence and move forward with the second part of this breakdown. So, of Sirach chapter 1 and verse 2 and 3. So another way that we can tear this down. So on the right side, then we're going to begin with second Idris, and we're in chapter 6 and verse 38. And I said, O Lord, thou spokest from the beginning of the creation, even the first day, and saideth thus, let heaven and earth be made, and thy work was a perfect work. And that's a full stop. And we know that this spirit then that's coming out of the mouth of God, then it's this wisdom, and whenever he speaks, then his spirit, then it does, and it gets it done. Just as Isaiah 55 and 11 says, and the word that goes forth out of his mouth, then it's not going to return into him void. So then we're going to look at this, and I'm actually first, before we tear this down, because I need this on the other side, and we'll pit second Idris and 6 and 38 on the left side. This one up, gotta. Okay, let me go back. Okay, so we'll put that there, and then we'll, on this right side, then we'll put Ecclesiastes, and we'll put chapter 8 and verse 4 there. So Ecclesiastes chapter 8 and verse 4. So where the word of a king is, so a ruler, there is power. And who may say unto him, so what doest thou? And that's exactly what was going on with even, and when he speaks, then his spirit, then it's going to get the job done. And this is why, earlier than I had referenced it, but now we're going to go there. So we'll look at Isaiah, and we'll go to chapter 55 and verse 11. So shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing where I sent unto it. So then this is exactly why then when we're doing our studies and we're digging through these books and all of these texts, then the spirit of wisdom, then it also be sometimes looked at or referenced in that female text, because the head of the woman, then it's the man, and in this case, the head of Christ, and it's God. So when God commands in the spirit, then it's going to get it done. Then we can also see this over in Psalms. Then we'll hit chapter 33, because Psalms 33 and 9, it breaks it down plainly. So we're in the book of Psalms, and we have chapter 33 and verse 9. For he spake, and it was done. And we got that semicolon there. That's the end of that thought. So that's how it works. So God speaks, and the spirit of wisdom is going to carry it out, get it done. He commanded, and it stood fast. And then we'll look at 1 Corinthians, because now we have to go there. Then we'll go to chapter 11, and we'll look at verse 3. And we'll pick it up on the other side of this second semicolon. And the head of Christ is God. So this is why that spirit, and it's also oftentimes, and it's referenced in that female text, that female census, because the head of the spirit, then it's God. But nevertheless, taking it back to 2nd Idris chapter 6 and verse 38. And I said, O Lord, thou spokest from the beginning of the creation, even the first day, and said it thus. So let heaven and earth be made, so these works, and thy word was a perfect work. So picking it up from here, then we can pit Jeremiah chapter 10 and verse 12 here. And we're going to be pitting Jeremiah 10 and 12 here for this particular reason. So we have Jeremiah 10 and 12. And the reason why we're pitting it here is because this verse, it makes it evident that God has made heaven and earth by his wisdom and power. So both heaven and earth being his works, and he himself the workmaster. So then we'll see this right here. So he has made the earth by his power. He has established the world by his wisdom and has stretched out the separated places by his discretion. So then the heaven and earth, then they are his works, and he's the workmaster. So from here, now we'll head over to Wisdom of Solomon, and we'll go to chapter 13 and verse 1, and then verse 4 and 5. So surely vain are all men by nature, who are ignorant of God, and could not out of the good things that are seen know him that is. Because then he made this world and everything in it for our learning. So then if we can't take the time out and, within our eyes and our understanding, to understand what the lessons and all of the parables that are in all of his works and his creation, then just as Wisdom of Solomon is saying, then it's not my words and it's in scripture, then we are vain. Because then we can't understand all of the good things that are evident in these creations that he's made. So neither by considering the works did they acknowledge the workmaster. And we'll skip down to verse 4 and 5. But if they were astonished at their power and virtue, let them understand by them so the things that God created, how much mightier he is that made them. For by the greatness and beauty of the creatures, proportionably the maker of them is seen. So everything God has created has a lesson to be learned. And we'll qualify that when we go back up. So we'll head over to Genesis, and we'll look at chapter 9, and we'll look at verse 3. And this is something that he said himself. So in Genesis 9 and 3, then it says, every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, so bread. So even as the green herb have I given you all things. So even with these pastors that he's given according to his heart, that is going to be feeding us with knowledge and understanding, even so the things that God created. As I said earlier, then I'm going to repeat again. So the things like as tallest up to the mountains, even to smallest the sand, dirt. There's a lesson to be learned in everything that God has created. So then that's the important thing with the heaven and earth, then this construct that we're in, then everything that's here, then it's for us to learn from. So just to reiterate, so even with the sand that is before the vast seas, which no man can number, the thoughts of the Lord are more in number than the very sand that sits as the boundary of the sea. And the seas can roar with their doctrines and toss themselves, but they will not pass the boundary appointed by God. So we'll head over, and this is even spoken in Psalms. So we'll go to Psalms, and we'll look at chapter 93. Actually, then we have another verse there that we have to go to first. So before we get to Psalms 93, then we have to go to chapter 139. And this is what I was talking about earlier. So even with the sand, that no man can number it. So Psalms 139 and 17 and 18. So how precious also are thy thoughts unto me, O God. How great is the sum of them. So then a total of all of these thoughts. If I should count them, they are more in number than the sand, than the sand. When I awake, I am still with thee. So this is a precept in Sirach. This is a precept in Psalms chapter 139. So then it's telling us that right there, that his thoughts, then they are greater than the sum of the sand that is before the sea. So for somebody to be able to number all of these pieces of sand that's before all of the seas that are in this world, then they are saying that they can number also the thoughts of the Lord, which we know that that's not possible. And as far as the other part of what I had said about the waves of all of the sea, then they toss themselves, yet they won't prevail and go past in the sand that is before the sea, then this is where we head over to Psalms 93, and we go over to verse 3 and 4. So the floods, so all of these floods of doctrines have lifted up, O Lord. So the floods have lifted up their voice. The floods lifted up their waves. And the Lord on high is mightier than the noise of many waters. So all of these other knowledges that are underneath the heavens. Yeah, than the mighty waves of the sea. So then, as I had stated even in the standalone teaching on Sirach chapter 1 and verse 2 and 3, then when you go and before, any sort of a beach and you can see the boundary of the sand there, then that's why then the waves, they operate the way that they do, where then they'll toss themselves and they'll run right up to where the sand is, and then they'll return right back into the seas. Then all of these doctrines, even when you look at it on a spiritual side, then these doctrines, these heresies, these denominations, and all of these devices and thoughts of man, then they are not greater than the thoughts of the Lord. Then this is why they can't prevail. So then I'm going to let that sit in for a sec before we move further with this teardown. So then we'll pit Sirach chapter 1 and verse 2 and 3 back there. So we pit it back on this side. And we'll read it before then we conclude with our final precepts. So who can number the sand of the sea and the drops of rain in the days of eternity? And who can number, or who can find out the height of heaven and the breadth of the earth and the deep in wisdom? So we'll look at Isaiah and we'll go to chapter 40 and we'll head down to verse 18. And I went past it. All right. So to whom then will you liken God? Or what likeness will you compare unto him? Then this is what Isaiah chapter 40 and 18 is questioning and asking us. Then we'll also head over to the book of Baruch. And we'll head over to chapter 3. And we'll look at verse 35. So this is our God. And there shall none other be accounted of in comparison of him. So just once again, then verses 2 and 3, then it's showing you then the omnipotence of God through in his works. And we also even learned in the first teardown that these things, then it's not possible to search these things or to measure them out exactly, because and even with what we had seen in Jeremiah 31 and 37, then if it were possible that heaven could be measured out and the earth could be searched out, that he would cast off the seed of Israel for everything that they've done. So that statement in Jeremiah 31 and 37, then it was put forth to show the stability of this covenant that he's made, but these similitudes and these works that he's created, that no man will be able to number all of these things out, as no man can number out exactly all of the thoughts of the Lord. So we're going to get ready to move on from Sirach chapter 1 and verse 2 and 3, and now then we're going to recap and do a summary over Sirach chapter 1 and verse 4. Alright, so now Sirach chapter 1 and verse 4, then it reads, So wisdom has been created before all things, and the understanding of prudence from everlasting. So, we get this out of the way. So what is this verse telling us? So, Sirach 1 and 4, then it tells you the eternal nature of God and his superiority over all things. So both he and his judgment seat is from everlasting, so before his works of old, to everlasting, meaning his dominion will continue without end. And we can see this, these first two precepts, and we're going to head over to the book of Psalms. Then we'll go to chapter 90, and we'll look at verse 2. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever thou hadst formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting thou art, so through beauty and perfection God, so to guide. Then we also have more meat over in Psalms 93, and we'll look at verse 2. So it's Psalms 93 and 2. So thy throne, so thy judgment seat is established of old. So thou, through beauty and perfection, art from everlasting. So that him and his judgment seat, then they're continuing without end. So this verse emphasizes the preeminence or superiority, so preeminent superiority of God's wisdom above man's wisdom. It is through his wisdom do men live, and their spirits also have their life. So there is a particular reason why this is set this way. So as the creator and worker of all things, so visible or invisible, so all things, they have their being through God's wisdom. So concerning the people of his inheritance, he has appointed one way above every other way in which we have life. And we'll start to tear this down with Hebrews. So then we'll head over to the book of Hebrews, that is, and we'll go to chapter 1, and we'll look at verses 10 through 14. So Hebrews 1 and 10 through 14. And thou, Lord, in the beginning hadst laid the foundation of the earth, and thy heavens are the works of thine hands. So they shall perish, but thou remainest, and they shall wax old as doeth a garment, and as a vesture shalt thou fold them up, and they shall be changed. But thou, through beauty and perfection, art the same, and thy years shall not fail. But to which of the angels said he at any time, so sit on my right hand, until I make thine enemies thy footstool? So to which of the angels said he at any time, so sit, to establish my righteous power, until I make thine enemies thy footstool? So are they not all ministering spirits, so sent forth to minister for them who shall be heirs of salvation? So even with the messengers, then Christ in his word, then it's preferred before the messengers. Then he's the one then that remains the same, and his years are not going to fail. So then we'll look over Colossians, and we'll go to chapter 1, and we'll look at chapter 1 and verse 16 through 20. For by him, which is just talking about Christ, were all things created, that are in heaven and that are in earth, so visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. So all things were created by him and for him, and he is before all things, and by him all things consist. And he is the head of the body, so the church. So this is talking about the people, who is the beginning, the first begotten from the dead, that in all things he might have the preeminence. For it pleased the Father that in him should all fullness dwell. And this is why in Hebrews 1 and 13 is saying what it's saying. It pleased the Creator that in him, so this Spirit that's gone forth from God, should all fullness dwell. And having made peace through the life of his suffering unto death, by him, then this is talking about Christ, to reconcile all things unto himself. By him, I say, whether they be things in earth or things in heaven. So then the Spirit, then it's preferred above all things. And then we'll also hit Sirach from here. Then we'll go to chapter 43, and we'll look at verse 26. By him the end of them have prosperous success, and by his word all things consist. So all things is going to have their being, all things is going to live through him. So then that leaves then another question while we're summarizing this. So how can we all apply this? Then we can apply it as a daily reminder that we have our life in being with God, and not to no man or woman or their unprofitable imaginations at all. So from here, then we'll look at Acts, and we'll go to chapter 17, and we'll read verses 24 through 29. So Acts 17 and 24 through 29. So God that made the world and all the things therein, seeing that he is Lord of heaven and earth, dwelleth not in temples made with hands, neither is worship with man's powers, as though he needed anything, seeing he giveth to all life and breath and all things, and has made of one life, so one blood, one life, all nations of men for to dwell on all the face of the earth, and has determined the times before appointed and the bounds of their habitation, that they should seek the Lord, if happily they might feel after him and find him, though he be not far from every one of us. For in him, and this is key in verse 28, we live and move and have our being, as certain also of your poets have said, for we also are also his offspring. So, there's something else and I want to tie in here. Then we'll look at the book of John. So we'll go to chapter 1, and we'll hit verse 3. And we'll look at verse 4. So all things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light, so the understanding, the knowledge of men. So then it's in this spirit, and that's gone forth from God, do we have our being. That's why it's study saying through him, then we have our being, through him all things consist. So it's not coming from a deceit that's coming forth from a man or a woman. In conclusion, and we have Acts 17 and 29, this is why it's saying what it's saying. For as much then as we are the offspring of God, we ought not to think that the God head, so the guide head, is like unto gold, so men, or silver, women, or stone in some path, graven by the beauty and perfection of man's device, or their thoughts. Then we're not comparing God to some man, or holding some man or woman to the same level that we hold God, that he's above all things. So in the times of this ignorance God winked at, but now commanded all men everywhere to repent, so to remember. So now then we'll hit 1 Corinthians, and we'll look at chapter 8, and we'll look at verses 4 through 6. So as concerning, therefore, the learning of those things that are offered in sacrifice unto idols, we know that an idol is nothing in the world, and that there is none other God but one. For though there be that are called gods, whether in heaven or in earth, as there be gods many and lords many, but to us there is but one guide, the creator of whom are all things, and we in him. So this is another precept in telling you exactly what we've been looking at in all of these other verses. And one Lord, so salvation, the anointed way, by whom are all things, and we by him. So just all in all, then it's telling you, Sirach 1 and 4, then the eternal nature of God and his superiority over all things. So then that was the recap and summary of Sirach chapter 1 and verse 4. So then I'm going to let that sit in for a sec, and then we'll end up a recap in verse 5. Alright, so now we're getting ready to work on Sirach chapter 1 and verse 5. So, the word of God Most High is the fountain of wisdom, and her ways are everlasting commandments. So, then this fountain, and as I brought up in the actual standalone lesson that was made for this verse, the fountain, then that's the source from which something proceeds. So when translating the word fountain using its foundational word meaning, it reads, so the word of God Most High, then it's the source of wisdom. So that's where this wisdom is coming from, then he's the source. And her ways are everlasting commandments. So before then we start running precepts for verse 5, then there's another area of focus on the other side of the semicolon. So this is something else that we need to hone in and look at. So her ways are everlasting commandments, and it means that we must desire instructions and also discipline if we are to be filled with God's wisdom. So just as it says right here in verse 1. Okay, sorry about that in my screen, and it glitched and went all the way to chapter 2. So just as it says even in verse 1, it says, all wisdom cometh from the Lord, so from the Creator, and is with him forever. Then there are some other things and it's said over in Psalms that we need to look at. So from here, then we'll head over to the book of Psalms, and we will go to chapter 111, and we'll look at verse 10. So Psalms 111 and verse 10. So the the desire of the Spirit of God is the beginning of wisdom. And when you look at this beginning in this verse, then it's talking about the root. So the beginning, the root. And it's the same way where, somebody that's dealing with some sort of a complex problem, then they're dealing with it, trying to figure out what's the cause, and they say, then let me get to the root of the problem. So it's the same way with Psalms 111 and 10. So the desire of the Spirit of God is the beginning, so the root of wisdom. A good understanding, so a good comprehension, have all they that do his commandments, his instruction. His praise endureth forever. So then this is telling us very clearly in Psalms 111 and 10 that his desire, so his desire in him, then it's the beginning of this wisdom. And when we get this clarification using like a full clause here, then it's saying that all of the people that seek after his instructions, they're the ones that have this good understanding, because then he's the source of this wisdom. Then we'll also, since we're in the book of Psalms now, then we'll drop down to chapter 112, and we'll look at verses 1 through 4. There are some more precepts that we need from here. So picking it up with verse 1. So praise ye the Spirit of God. Blessed, so wisdom is given the man, M-A-N, male or female, that feareth, so desireth the Spirit of God, that delighteth greatly in his commandments, so his instructions. It's exactly what we had just looked at in the previous chapter. His seed shall be mighty upon the earth. The generation of the upright shall be blessed, so given this wisdom. So then there was a lot that was just said here. So his seed, which we know that the seed is the word of God, shall be mighty upon the earth. The generation of the upright shall be blessed, so given this wisdom. So, we got to unpack this before we look at verse 3 and 4. So then just right here, taking it back for verse 1, and it already said that wisdom is going to be given a man that desireth the Spirit of God, meaning that we have to greatly delight in his instructions. And when it's talking about the seed, then you look at that seed, then it's the word of God. So it's the same way with the seed that you will naturally, then if you physically had a seed and you planted it, in good ground, then when you water it with that water and it's also getting light, then that seed, then it's going to take root, and it's going to grow and grow and grow in its knowledge and wisdom, and it's going to bring forth fruit. Then this example that I'm giving then it can be seen and it's evident in verse 2, which then I'll tie a precept, so then this will come out more. So then we're going to look at Luke, and we'll go to chapter 8, and we'll go to verses 5 through 8. So just remember what we actually, before we even read that precept, and I'll reread Psalms 112 and 2. So his seed, think about the seed that the Most High then He sown in us, shall be mighty upon the earth. The generation of the upright shall be given wisdom, because they delight in this right here. So now let's look at Luke chapter 8 and verse 5 through 8. So a sower went out to sow his seed, and as he sowed, some fell by the wayside, and it was trodden down, and the fowls of the air devoured it. And some fell upon a rock, and as soon as it sprung up, it withered away, because it lacked moisture. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprang up with it, and choked it. And others fell on good ground, and sprang up and bare fruit, so these good works 100-fold. And then we need to skip down and look at verse 15. So then this is the point. And this is the point over here in Psalms 112 and 2. But that on the good ground are they which in an honest and good heart, because this good ground, and this is talking about your heart, then it's not hard, then it's soft, to where then it can receive this word. Having heard the word, keep it, and bring forth fruit with patience. So then you're going to be a steadfast and continuing with this word. Then it starts to bring forth fruit over this process of time that you're abiding and keeping this word in you. So then hopefully then y'all can see that. And if you can, you just hit yes. And if no, you don't have to put that in the comments section or in the chat. Then, if you want to be more discreet, you can just send me an email and I can talk to you more about that offline. But that's every bit of what's going over here in Psalms 112 and 2. When you're greatly delighting in these instructions. So his seed shall be mighty upon earth. The generation of the upright shall be blessed, so given this wisdom. It's exactly what we just seen in verse 15, what we're getting ready to see in verses 3 and 4 of Psalms 112. So wealth and riches shall be in his house. Then you are the temple of God. So 1 Corinthians 3 and 16. And his righteousness endureth forever. So unto the upright there arises light and darkness. So in this obscurity, in this place of no knowledge, he is gracious and full of compassion and righteous. So every bit of what Luke 8 and 15 was talking about, then it's elaborated upon and expounded with verse 3. Then if you're delighting after his commandments, to where then you're not, casting them behind your back, then his seed, then it can take root and bear fruit 100-fold, and you'll have all of these wealth and riches in your temple. Then you won't be as somebody that's going to be showing up before the Lord empty on the day of your judgment, and you already know what that says. Then we're not supposed, you know what? I can do y'all a better one. So we're going to go over to Sirach. Now I believe it's in 34 or 35. I'm going to start with 35. Yep. Then it's here. Sirach 35 and 4. Thou shalt not appear empty before the Creator. That you want to have all sorts of precious things unto the Creator in your temple on that day of your judgment. So from here, we'll put that verse back there. So then we'll put Sirach, since we was working on this, in the source. And now then we need to head over to Proverbs. So we'll head over to Proverbs, and we'll go to chapter 8, and we will look at verse 32 through 34. So Proverbs 8 and 32 and 34. So now therefore, for that reason, hearken unto me, O ye children. For blessed, so wisdom given, are they that keep my ways. So just as we had seen, same way with over here, because this spirit, and it's the source of this wisdom. So now therefore hearken unto me, O ye children. For blessed, so wisdom given, are they that keep my ways. Verse 33. So hear instruction and be wise and refuse it not. So just don't be, as we had seen in Luke 8, and it's that ground where then it's stony. Then you want to have the good ground. So just not refusing and casting a word off. So hear instruction and be wise and refuse it not. So blessed wisdom is given is the man that heareth me, watching daily at my gates, so waiting at the posts of my doors. And there is something, that's very profound with this right here. Instead of me just starting out elaborating and speaking on this thing, then I'm going to let the precepts go before me. So then I'm going to head over to Sirach, chapter 6. And, before then we start, we need to hone in and focus on this right here. So it's saying here. And even in verse 34, saying again, wisdom is given a man that heareth me. So we are heading over in Sirach chapter 6 and 32 and through 37 for a reason. And precepts is going to make it very evident why. So my son, my servant, if thou wilt, thou shalt be taught. It all depends on us. Then the ball is in our court. And if thou wilt apply thy mind, thou shalt be prudent. If thou love to hear, thou shalt receive understanding. And if thou bow thine ear, thou shalt be wise. So stand in the multitude of the elders. And that's the end of that thought. So before then we continue with this, then that's why it's saying, so blessed is the man that heareth me, so watching daily at my gates, waiting at the posts of my doors, so my entrance. Then we know that the Spirit, then it has servants, and it sent forth its servants into the vineyard. So then what we have to do, then it also includes me as well, then we have to really be paying attention to these elders that are bringing forth in these preceptual understandings. So then when they're going forth and they're doing their teachings, then you're there with your notes. Then if you have questions and you ask about something, then you just don't keep your mouth shut if you don't understand anything, because then that's where pride then it kicks in. Closed mouth and it won't be fed. But every day over here at the King James Bible University, then there's teachings that are going forth. Then we have to stand in a multitude of these elders. Then this is how this understanding is going to be made known unto us. Then the Spirit, once again, then it needs a body to work in. Then a wholly separated body then it's willing to do this word out of the goodness of heart and not doing it for, money and for other sorts of motives or to try and look good in front of somebody. No, then the Spirit, then it has servants out there that is going to be bringing forth this understanding. And we, if we desire to gain understanding and to be wise, then we have to be willing to hear. That's why then it was saying what it was saying over here in Proverbs 8 and 32 and 33. So now then we're going to pick it back up with Sirach 6 and 34. So stand in the multitude of the elders and cleave unto him that is wise. So be willing to hear every godly discourse, and let not the parables of understanding escape thee. And if thou seest a man of understanding, so get thee betimes unto him, and let thy foot wear the steps of his door. So let thy mind be upon the ordinances of the Lord, and meditate continuously in his commandments. So he shall establish thine heart, because that seed is going to take root, and give thee wisdom at thine own desire. So then we have to desire to hear. these instructions, and it's nothing is deviated so far from the precepts that I brought forth. So from here, now then we have some more meat in Sirach. Then we're going to go to chapter 8, and we're going to look at verses 8 and 9. So despise not the discourse of the wise, but acquaint thyself with their proverbs. For of them thou shalt learn instruction, and how to serve great men with ease. So miss not the discourse of the elders, for they also learned of their fathers, and of them thou shalt learn understanding, and to give answer as need requireth. So then nothing has changed here. Then it's telling us right there that we have to be willing to hear the instruction that are coming forth from these teachers. So then that's even the case where Proverbs, and it expands on that. So we have Proverbs, and we'll look at chapter 1 and verse 7. So the fear, so the desire of the Lord is the beginning, so the root of knowledge. But fools despise wisdom and instruction, which is freely then it's going to be given from these servants that are laboring on behalf of the Creator. So all in all, as I had said earlier, then the Spirit, then it's sent forth his laborers into the vineyard. And we'll look at this with Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 11 through 13. And he gave some, so apostles, so we have these messengers, and some prophets, so people that are speaking the word of God, and some evangelists, so we have these proclaimers and those that are making these things public notice, and some pastors, so these sowers that are going to be feeding, and we have teachers, which is going to teach and use concepts and examples. So then we have all of these servants that are out there in the vineyard that are able to for us to listen to, and we can gain understanding and this knowledge that's actually coming from the Creator on the behalf of these servants that are in the vineyard. And just as I had said, and he gave some, so apostles, and some prophets, and some evangelists, and some pastors and teachers, for the perfecting of the saints, so the people of the sanctuary, for the work of the ministry, for the edifying of the body, so it's the people of the anointed, till we all come in unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the servant of God, unto a perfect man, unto the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ, so the anointed way. So then we have to be willing to hear instructions that are coming forth from these servants that are out here amongst the people. So before we move further, then I'm going to let that sit in for a sec. All right. And now building on from the precepts that we had just ran for Sirach chapter 1 and verse 5, then there's more to it, and there's more that I'd like to expand on. So now then I'm getting ready to address the teachers. So we as teachers are not off the hook either. So we are able to carry out and fulfill our obligations to God by the measure of wisdom given to us, meaning we must also hear and learn wisdom ourselves and teach by it. So the reason, and I say all of that is now then we have more precepts that we got to look at. So right back in Proverbs chapter 8 and verse 14 all the way down to 16, then there are some things that have been said that needs to get all of our attention. So counsel is mine, and sound wisdom. So I am understanding. I have strength. By me kings reign, and princes decree justice. By me princes rule, and nobles, even all the judges, so the teachers of the earth. So then this is why then we was getting ready to get into this bag right here. Because the teachers, and they also have to learn wisdom and teach by it. So now we need to look at Sirach chapter 10, and we'll go to verse 21. So the desire of the Lord goeth before the obtaining of authority, but roughness and pride is the losing thereof. So then meaning that roughness and pride, then that's when you're trying to exalt your own throne, so your own judgment over the judgment of God, or speaking lies and deceit out of your own heart according to your own purposes, whether then that's for money or to be seen in front of people. Then once you start doing those things, then roughness and pride, then it'll cause you to lose that authority. So then we have to desire the Creator. Something else that we need to look at as well. So we have Deuteronomy, and we'll go to chapter 17, and we'll look at verse 16 down through 20. So, but he shall not multiply horses to himself, so these private interpretations to himself, nor cause the people to return to Egypt to bondage, to the end that he should multiply horses. For as the Lord has said unto you, you shall henceforth return no more that way. So these teachers, and they can't be multiplying these private interpretations to themselves. Neither shall he multiply wives, so these spirits to himself, that his heart turn not away. Neither shall he greatly multiply to himself silver and gold. So there is more. And it shall be, when he sitteth upon the throne of his kingdom, that he shall write him a copy of this law in a book out of that which is before the priests, the Levites. And it shall be with him, and he shall read therein all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear, so desire the Lord his God, to keep all the words of this law and these statutes to do them, that his heart be not lifted up above his brethren, and that he turn not aside from the commandment to the right hand or to the left, to the end that he may prolong his days in his kingdom and his children in the midst of Israel. So we're looking at these precepts, and we went to Sirach 10 and 21, Proverbs 8 and 14 through 16, and we're looking at this one because it's clearly, then it's warning these teachers that then we cannot multiply these spirits to ourselves or these private interpretations. Then we have to have same thing that we're teaching out of this volume of the book, not lifting our hearts up above our brethren. And then, there's something deeper that we have to look at, which actually I'll just bring it on this side. Then we're going to go to Wisdom of Solomon, and we're going to go to chapter 4, and we're going to go to verse 1 through 21, and then 24 and 25. Let's see. Actually, no, I think this is the wrong one. It's not chapter 4, it's chapter 6. So, excuse me, and it's not Wisdom of Solomon chapter 4, then it's chapter 6 in verse 1 through 21 and 24 and 25. So then we're going to start going through this. So it says, "Hear therefore, O you kings, so you rulers, and understand." So just as I started off, getting into this, then the teachers, and they have to hear and learn and understand too. So, hear therefore, O ye kings, and understand. Learn, ye that be teachers of the ends of the earth. So give ear, ye that rule the people, and glory in the multitude of nations. For power is given you of the Lord, so the Creator, and sovereignty from the highest, who shall try your works and search out your counsels. So then even, the teachers, then they're being set up from the Spirit of God. So then I'm going to stop there, and then we'll run a precept here. So we're going to look at Micah, and we go to chapter 3, and we will look at verse 8. So, but truly I am full of power by the Spirit of the Lord, and of doctrines and teachings. So the spirit of doctrines and teachings, and of might, to declare unto Jacob his transgression, and to Israel his wicked thoughts. So that goes back to what we had looked at in Proverbs chapter 8. So strength its spirits, and so its counsel and might. So just going back to Wisdom of Solomon chapter 6 and verse 3, it says, "For power is given you of the Lord, and sovereignty from the highest, who shall try your works and search out your counsels. Because being ministers of his kingdom, you have not taught aright, nor kept the law, nor walked after the counsel of God. And this is something that happens today, which we'll see exactly, why that verse was written and penned in there. So then this is what some of these teachers have done. When we look at Micah chapter 3 and verse 9 and through 11. So Micah chapter 3 and verse 9 through 11. Hear this, I pray you, you heads of the house of Jacob, and princes of the house of Israel, that arbor, so you hate doctrines and teaching, and pervert all equity. So they build up Zion with life, so this wicked lifestyle, in Jerusalem with acts of sin. The heads thereof teach for reward, and the priests, or the intermediaries thereof, teach for hire, and the prophets thereof divine for money. Yet will they lean upon the Lord and say, it's not the Spirit of God among us, none evil can come upon us. So this is the problem. Then you're just using the Lord as a front, but you're teaching out of the deceit out of your own hearts for ulterior motives, and most of the time then it's usually this money. So this is why this is saying this over here. So we'll take it back from the very top. So hear therefore, O you kings, and understand. Learn, ye that be teachers of the ends of the earth. So give ear, you that rule the people, and glory in the multitude of the nations. For power is given you of the Lord, and sovereignty from the highest, who shall try your works, and search out your counsels. Because, being ministers of his kingdom, you have not taught aright, nor the law, nor walked after the counsel of God. So horribly and speedily shall he come upon you, for his sharp judgment shall be to them that be in high places. For mercy will soon pardon the meanest, but mighty men shall be mightily tormented. For he which is Lord over all shall fear no man's person, neither shall he stand in awe of any man's greatness. For he has made the small and the great, and careth for all alike. So then we are teachers, as I had started earlier, then we are not off for the hook. But a sore trial shall come upon the mighty. Unto you, therefore, for that reason, O kings, so these rulers do I speak, that you may learn wisdom and not fall away. For they that keep holiness holily shall be judged, so taught holy, and they that have learnt such things shall find what to answer. So wherefore, for that reason, set your affection upon my words, desire them, and you shall be instructed. Then it goes back to what we had looked at, that this wisdom, then the source of it is the Spirit of God. So then we got more that we have to look at. So wisdom is glorious and never fadeth away. Yea, she is easily seen of them that promise her, and found of such as seek her. She prevented them that desire her, in making herself first known unto them, because the Spirit is going to try you. So whoso seeketh her early shall have no great travail, for he shall find her sitting at his doors. So to think therefore upon her is perfection of wisdom, and whoso watcheth for her shall quickly be without care. For she goeth about seeking such as worthy of her, showeth herself favorably unto them in the ways, meeting them in every thought. For the true very beginning, so the root of her is the desire of discipline, and the care of discipline is love, so being selfless towards this instructions in its discipline. And the giving heed unto our laws is the assurance of incorruption, and incorruption maketh us near unto God. So therefore the desire of wisdom bringeth to a kingdom, and that was the precept right there for Sirach 10 and 21. If you delight be then in thrones and scepters, O you kings, or rulers of the people, honor, so give that respect to wisdom, that she may reign forevermore. So, and then we'll skip down to verse 24 and 25. So, but the multitude of the wise is the welfare of the world, and a wise king is the upholding of the people. So receive therefore instruction through my words, and it shall do you good. So just as, with the people, then the teachers thereof, then we have to desire wisdom too. So, leaving from here, then we're going to end up heading back to Sirach. And now then we'll look at chapter 1, and we'll look at verses 6 and 7. So it reads, to whom has the root, so the beginning of wisdom, been revealed? Or who has known her wise counsels? Unto whom has the knowledge of wisdom been made manifest or made known? And who has understood her great experience? So verse 7, then it's, if you see then the words here, then it's italicized. So meaning that this right here was supplied for translation purposes, but when you read the text, then it's italicized and it's not there. But, for the sake and purposes of this teaching, then we're still going to cover verses 6 and 7. So to whom has the root of wisdom been revealed, or who has known her wise counsels? Unto whom has the knowledge of wisdom been made manifest or made known, and who has understood her great experience? So those are questions that are being asked that we're getting ready to answer right here. So we're going to start with Wisdom of Solomon, and we'll go to chapter 9, and we're going to look at verse 16 and 17. And hardly do we guess aright at the things that are upon earth, and with labor do we find the things that are before us, but the things that are in the separated places who has searched out? And thy counsel who has known, except thou give wisdom and send thy Holy Spirit from above? So this question, and it's important because it emphasizes plainly that in this journey there are no other teachers of wisdom but God, meaning that since he himself is the teacher and giver of wisdom, just as we had seen in the verses before, then we have to follow instructions and just never feel that at any time on this journey that we're too grown or we know it all to humble ourselves to give ear. So just these last two precepts, then I'm going to run Psalms, and we're going to go to chapter 119, and we'll look at verse 1 through 4. It says, blessed, so wisdom that are given are the undefiled in the way, so who walk after the law of the Spirit of God. Wisdom are given they that keep his testimonies, and that seek him with the whole heart. So you're not being double-minded or being double-hearted, because then you won't receive anything then if you're being double-hearted. They also do no iniquity, so no act of sin. So they walk in all of his ways, because if you're not doing that, then there are some iniquities that are being committed. Thou hast commanded us to keep thy precepts diligently. From there, then we'll hit Psalms 119, and we'll look at 105. Oh, it's 104, not 105. Too far. So through thy precepts I get understanding. Therefore I hate every false way. And then, we'll head over to Isaiah, and we'll go to chapter 28 and verse 9 and 10. So whom shall he teach knowledge? And whom shall he make to understand doctrine? Them that are weaned from the milk and drawn from the breasts. For precept must be upon precept, these instructions upon instruction, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little and there a little. For with stammering lips and another tongue will he speak to this people, because then he speaks in parables and dark speeches. So that's why then this wisdom, which is through these precepts and these instructions that's coming from him, it's what's going to reveal then his wisdom to us. So there's actually something else that I wanted to show. So we're going to go to Wisdom of Solomon, and we'll hit chapter 8, and we'll look at verses 3 through 5. So Wisdom of Solomon chapter 8 and 3 through 5. And that she is conversant with God, she magnifieth her nobility. Yeah, the creator of all things himself loved her, so promised her. For she is privy to the mysteries of the knowledge of God, and a lover of his works. If riches be a possession to be desired in this life, so what is richer than wisdom that worketh all things? And we're going to look at verse 8. So if a man desireth much experience, she knoweth the things of old, and conjectured aright what is to come. She knoweth the subtleties of speeches, and can expound dark sentences. She foreseeth signs and wonders in the events of seasons, so the appointed times and times. So with that being said, those are the precepts for these verses right here. So with that being said, then we're going to break right here. Then I'm going to get the precept cheat sheets up. And then, when we see you next time, we'll end up covering Sirach chapter 1, and we'll look at verse 9 and 10, because 8, then it was already done, and that standalone teaching, it's already there. So until next time, and I bid you all a shalom and peace.
Control my anxiety, feeling like I'm touching the ceiling. When I'm with you, I can't breathe. Boy, you do something to me. Ooh, no, I'll never get over you until I find something new to get me high like you do. Yeah. Ooh, no, I'll never get over you until I find something new to get me high like you do. Listen to my heart go bottom. Boot up, boy, you do something to me. Boot up, my heart go bottom. Boot up, boy, you do something to me. It just won't stop and go bottom. Boot up, boy, you do something to me. Boot up, boy, you do something to me. It just won't stop and go. Head over heels in love. Right in front of you, I ain't gotta look no more, baby. Head over heels in love. Right in front of you, I ain't gotta look no more, baby. I wanna build this love. Everything you own, you
much sauce, like, yeah, yeah. I don't care what it costs, like, yeah, yeah. Say I ain't gotta talk, like, yeah, yeah. Cause my diamonds, they wash, like, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, it took a loss, like, yeah. Look, I got too much sauce, like, yeah, yeah. I don't care what it costs, like, yeah, yeah. Say I ain't gotta talk, like, yeah, yeah. Cause my diamonds, they wash, like, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I took a loss, like, yeah, yeah. Alright, man, floss, like, yeah, yeah. Do the money, walk, like, yeah, 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 yeah. 100 bands on my count, like, yeah, yeah. Put the cash, like, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, man. I'm from Texas right now, man.
Deuces in your trays.
Big homie. Y'all know how this go, right? Real recognize real, man.